When Lauren pushed me down the stairs at the Boston Harbor Country Club while I was 7 months pregnant, I knew exactly how long it would take to destroy her. 24 weeks, to be precise. The time my daughter needed to be born healthy. While I prepared every piece on the board, I grabbed for the railing I couldn't reach, felt my body spin in the air, and the last thing I saw before hitting the ground were her blue eyes, shining with satisfaction so pure it almost looked orgasmic. 3. Fractured ribs, broken wrist, 24 hours of absolute terror until the doctors confirmed my baby girl was alive. Lauren walked out the side door while witnesses ran to help me, disappearing like nothing had happened. If you've ever been invisible in your own life, stay with me. This story is for you. I'm lying there on the marble floor of the most exclusive club in Boston, blood pooling under my head, and all I can think about is how Lauren calculated the angle. She didn't push randomly. She waited until I was exactly 3 steps from the top, positioned herself precisely, and used enough force to make me lose balance but not enough to leave bruises on my back. Professional, premeditated, perfect in its cruelty. My hands instinctively went to my belly as I fell, that primal mother instinct to protect what matters most, and I felt the baby kick hard against my palm like she was fighting back from inside. That kick saved me. Not physically, I was already falling, but mentally. It reminded me I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. The paramedics arrived within 8 minutes. I counted every second, watching the crystal chandelier above me sway slightly from the air conditioning, focusing on anything except the searing pain in my ribs and the wet warmth I felt between my legs that I prayed wasn't blood. Lauren had vanished completely by then. Witnesses crowded around, women in tennis whites and men in golf polos, all making those concerned faces people make when tragedy interrupts their Saturday brunch. But none of them had actually seen the push. Lauren made sure of that. She waited until everyone was looking at the dessert table, that exact moment when the chocolate soufflés came out and caused the usual commotion. Boston General Hospital became my prison for 3 days. White walls, fluorescent lights that hummed constantly, that specific smell of antiseptic mixed with fear that hospitals always have. Bradley, my husband, arrived 3 hours and 47 minutes after I was admitted. I counted every minute on the clock above the door. He smelled like her perfume, Chanel No. 5, which I only knew because Lauren made sure to spray it liberally whenever she was around him. He stayed exactly 15 minutes, checked his phone 8 times, and left saying he needed to handle something urgent at the office. The office, on Saturday, at 7 p.m. That night, alone in my hospital room, I received the text that changed everything. Lauren's number lit up my phone at 2:47 a.m. Accidents happen, especially to people who don't know their place. No emoji, no punctuation beyond that single period, just pure distilled threat. I stared at those words until my eyes burned, reading them over and over, feeling each letter carve itself into my memory. She had documented the attack as an accident. She had 3 prepared witnesses, all employees from my father-in-law's law firm. She had a lawyer ready to sue me for defamation if I dared accuse her. But here's what Lauren didn't know as she sent that text, probably lying in bed next to her phone, feeling powerful and untouchable. My grandfather, Samuel Morrison, had died 6 months earlier. Billionaire, discreet, owner of an investment real estate network that controlled commercial properties in 23 states. The will was in silent probate, no headlines, no publicity, exactly how he lived. I was the sole heir, $600 million in liquid assets, plus properties valued at another $400 million. The estate lawyers had asked me for absolute discretion until the final asset transfer, scheduled to happen in 6 weeks. 6 weeks. That's all I needed to wait. 6 weeks of playing the vulnerable pregnant wife. 6 weeks of letting them think I was weak, dependent, without options. 6 weeks of watching Lauren parade around Boston society like she'd already won. I grew up watching my grandfather build his empire in silence. Samuel Morrison never announced acquisitions, never did press conferences, never let anyone know what he owned until the moment he needed that knowledge to matter. He taught me that real power whispers until it's time to roar. That lesson was about to become Lauren's worst nightmare. Bradley knew my grandfather was wealthy, but he never knew the true extent of the Morrison fortune. I kept silent, lived modestly, used my married name, Claire Lancaster instead of Claire Morrison, avoided any public connection to the Morrison empire. His family, the Lancasters, treated me like disposable furniture from day one. They thought I was nobody, a girl from a middle-class background who got lucky catching their golden boy. They had no idea I'd been sitting on a fortune that made their precious law firm look like a lemonade stand. That night in the hospital, feeling my daughter move inside me, reading Lauren's threat over and over, I made a decision. I called Marcus Wright, my grandfather's estate executor. Marcus had protected Morrison interests for 40 years. He answered on the second ring despite the late hour. I said 5 words. I need to accelerate everything. There was a pause. Then, how long do you need? 2 weeks. And I want it public. The war was about to begin, and they had no idea I'd already won. For 18 months before that push, Lauren had been systematically destroying my life, and I documented every single move. I have a leather journal, moleskin burgundy, cost me $23 at the bookstore on Newbury Street, where I recorded everything: dates, times, witnesses, screenshots. I didn't know why I was keeping records back then, just some instinct telling me to preserve evidence. Now I understand it was my subconscious preparing for war before my conscious mind caught up. It started with the accidentally on purpose text messages sent directly to my phone. Photos of Lauren with Bradley in hotel rooms I recognized from his business trips. The Fairmont in San Francisco. I recognized the distinctive headboard from when we stayed there on our honeymoon. The peninsula in Chicago. That view of the lake was unmistakable. She'd photograph them in bed, his arm around her, both pretending to sleep, and send them to me at 3 a.m. She knew I'd be awake nursing our first baby, knew I'd be alone in the dark with nothing but my thoughts and that glowing screen. The first time it happened, I threw up, literally ran to the bathroom and vomited until my throat burned. The second time, I saved the photo and wrote down every detail I could identify. The third time, I felt my hands go numb and my vision tunnel, but I still saved it. By the 5th time, I barely reacted physically. I just added it to my growing file. Then came the emails, detailed accounts of their encounters, always sent in the early morning hours. She described restaurants where they'd eaten: Mistress in the South End, number 9 Park near the State House, and I'd realized those were the same nights Bradley told me he was working. Late. She'd mentioned conversations they'd had, inside jokes they'd developed, pet names he'd never used with me. Each email was a tiny knife, precisely placed. She never sent them during reasonable hours when I might have support around me, always between 2 and 4 a.m., when I was alone with a crying baby and an absent husband. Our 5th wedding anniversary, Bradley made reservations at Menton, the French restaurant in Fort Point. I wore the blue dress he bought me for my birthday, spent an hour on my makeup, trying to look like the woman he married, instead of the exhausted mother I'd become. We sat down at 7:30. At 7:45, Lauren walked in. She didn't sit near us. That would have been too obvious. She positioned herself 2 tables away, perfectly in Bradley's line of sight when he looked up from his menu. She wore red, blood red, a dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. She ordered champagne and drank it slowly, maintaining eye contact with my husband. For beats that lasted too long, Bradley's hand trembled when he picked up the menu. I watched the tremor, noted the exact moment it started, counted how many times he glanced in her direction. 14 times during our appetizers alone. I asked him directly that night in the car. My voice didn't shake even though my insides were liquid. I said, "Are you sleeping with her?" He laughed. Actually laughed, like I'd told a joke. He said I was being paranoid, that pregnancy hormones were making me see things that weren't there, that Lauren was just a colleague from his father's firm. He used that specific word, colleague, like it was a shield. Then he told me I was embarrassing myself with my jealousy, that I needed to trust him, that my insecurity was unattractive. Each word landed like a slap, and I felt my face get hot with shame. Not shame for asking, but shame that I'd married someone who could gaslight me so smoothly. Bradley's family made everything worse. His mother, Diane Lancaster, had decided on our wedding day that I wasn't good enough. She told me at the rehearsal dinner, 3 glasses of wine in, that I didn't come from proper breeding. Those were her exact words. Proper breeding, like I was a dog. She said it smiling, surrounded by their country club friends, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Bradley stood right there and said nothing, just looked at his shoes like a scolded child. His father, Richard Lancaster Sr., had this trick he'd perfected over decades. Whenever I spoke at family dinners, he'd wait until I was mid-sentence, Didn't matter if I was answering a direct question or contributing to conversation, and he'd interrupt to change the subject completely. He did it so smoothly that most people didn't notice, but I noticed. Every single time. I counted once. 7 interruptions in one dinner. 7 times my voice simply stopped mattering mid-word. I'd feel the words die in my throat, feel my face flush, feel that specific shame of being erased. In real time, his sister, Vanessa Lancaster Whitmore, was subtler, but more cruel. She'd post photos of family events on Instagram, birthday parties, holiday gatherings, Sunday brunches, that I was strategically excluded from. The captions always mentioned family, real family, the people who matter. I wasn't in a single photo. When I asked Bradley why I wasn't invited to his mother's birthday lunch, he said I must have misunderstood, that it was just immediate family, even though Vanessa's husband was there. When I pointed that out, he got angry with me for making everything about myself. When I announced my first pregnancy at their Thanksgiving dinner, Diane literally sighed. Audible, dramatic, disappointed sigh. Then she said something under her breath about women who trap men with babies. Bradley heard it. I know he heard it because his jaw tightened and he reached for his wine glass, but he didn't defend me. He just asked if anyone wanted more turkey. The real revelation came on a Tuesday afternoon in March, 3 months before the push. I was folding Bradley's laundry. Yes, I still did his laundry like a good wife, still organized his closet by color and season, still made sure his favorite shirts were clean for important meetings. His phone was charging on the dresser, and it lit up with a notification. I wasn't trying to snoop. The screen was just there, glowing, impossible to ignore. It was a bank alert. Transfer complete. $47,500 to account ending in 4892. I stared at that number. We had a joint account. We had separate accounts. I knew every account number we owned. Account 4892 wasn't one of them. My hands stopped moving. I was holding one of his white Oxford shirts, the fabric soft between my fingers, and I felt the room tilt slightly. That specific sensation when reality shifts, and you know nothing will ever be the same. I picked up his phone. I knew his passcode because he'd never bothered to hide it from me. Another sign of how little he thought I mattered, and opened his banking app. There were 6 transfers in the past 4 months, all to account 4892, totaling $217,000. Money from our joint savings account, the account where we kept funds for the down payment on our dream house, where we'd been saving for 5 years. Gone. Transferred in careful amounts that wouldn't trigger automatic fraud alerts. 12,000 here, 33,000 there, each one precisely, calculated to stay under reporting thresholds. I sat on the edge of our bed, still holding his shirt, and felt something crystallize inside me. Not panic, not sadness, clarity. Cold, perfect, absolute clarity. This wasn't just an affair. This was theft, premeditated financial fraud. And if Bradley was moving money secretly, Lauren was involved. I knew it the way you know it's going to rain by the smell of the air. I didn't confront him. That's what the old Claire would have done. The Claire who still believed in honest conversations and marriage counseling and working things out. Instead, I took photos of every screen, every transfer, every date, every amount. My hands were completely steady. I felt weirdly calm, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Then I put his phone back exactly where it was, finished folding his laundry, and went to the kitchen to start dinner. That night, I cooked his favorite meal: steak, medium rare, roasted potatoes with rosemary, Caesar salad with homemade dressing. I set the table with our wedding china, the Lenox pattern his mother insisted we register for. I poured his wine. I smiled when he came home. I asked about his day. I was perfect. And while I played perfect wife, my mind was racing through possibilities. Where was the money going? What were they planning? How deep did this go? I felt my heart beating faster but kept my face serene. I've always been good at that, showing nothing while feeling everything. My grandfather taught me that. He used to say the best poker players aren't the ones with the best cards. They're the ones with the best faces. After dinner, after Bradley fell asleep, I went to my home office, the small room off the kitchen that used to be a pantry, and started searching. I had access to all our financial accounts. Bradley never locked me out because he never thought I'd look. Why would I? I was just his trusting wife, busy with babies and household management, too exhausted to notice anything beyond. Diaper changes and meal planning. I found it at 2:17 a.m., A secondary account under Bradley's name at a different bank. Eastern Capital Trust, small private bank in downtown Boston that specializes in discretionary wealth management. The kind of bank that doesn't advertise, doesn't have branches, only works with referrals. Account opened 14 months ago. Regular deposits from our joint account. Regular withdrawals to an LLC called Harborview Consulting. I searched Harborview Consulting. Delaware Corporation. Registered agent address was a P.O. box. Officers listed: Lauren Mitchell and Bradley Lancaster. Incorporated 18 months ago, exactly when the affair started. My vision actually blurred for a second. I had to blink hard to clear it. They'd created a company together. This wasn't just sex and stolen moments. This was a plan. A long-term, detailed plan to move marital assets into a corporate structure where I'd have no claim. They were preparing for divorce. Before I even knew I was getting divorced, I felt something shift in my chest. Physical sensation, like a lock clicking open. The scared wife who'd been crying into her pillow for months just stopped existing. In her place was someone colder, someone who'd inherited more than money from Samuel Morrison, someone who understood that sentimentality is a luxury and revenge is a mathematics problem. I spent the rest of that night downloading every document I could find: bank statements, corporate, filings, transfer records. I created a folder on my laptop labeled Recipe Collection and saved everything there. Bradley would never think to look in a folder about cooking. Why would he? I was just his little housewife who made his dinners and folded his shirts. By the time the sun came up, I had a map of their entire scheme. $217,000 moved. LLC designed to hold assets. Lauren's name on everything. Bradley's signature on documents he probably didn't even read, because he trusted her completely. I went upstairs, crawled into bed next to my husband, and felt nothing. No love, no anger, just that cold clarity spreading through my veins like ice water. I had 6 weeks until my inheritance finalized. 6 weeks to gather more evidence. 6 weeks to build a case so airtight they'd never escape. The war had started. They just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I did something I'd never done before. I hired professionals, not the kind of private investigators you find in phone books or online ads with cheesy taglines about catching cheating spouses. I wanted former federal agents, people who understood financial crimes, people who wouldn't just take photos of hotel meetups, but could trace money through shell corporations and offshore accounts. Marcus Wright gave me 3 names. I hired all of them. The lead investigator was a woman named Patricia Chen, 53 years old, former FBI white-collar crime division, 27 years of experience. She came to my house on a Wednesday afternoon when Bradley was at work. She wore a gray pantsuit and carried a leather briefcase, looked more like a lawyer than a detective. We sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd served Bradley dinner the night before, playing obedient wife, and I showed her everything I'd found. Patricia didn't react with shock or sympathy. She just nodded, took notes in precise handwriting, and said, "This is good documentation, but it's not enough for criminal charges yet. We need to prove intent and show a pattern of deception. Give me 2 weeks. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. I was 7 months pregnant, my body getting heavier and more uncomfortable every day. My daughter kicked constantly, little feet jabbing my ribs like she was trying to break out early. I couldn't sleep, not because of pregnancy insomnia, but because my mind never stopped calculating. What if Patricia found nothing? What if Lauren and Bradley had been smarter than I thought? What if I'd revealed my hand too early by hiring investigators? I went through the motions of normal life, attended prenatal appointments, went to the grocery store, smiled at neighbors, had lunch with Bradley's mother because refusing would have been suspicious. Diane took me to Atlantic Fish Company, ordered expensive wine she knew I couldn't drink, and spent 90 minutes explaining why she thought I should consider a different pediatrician because our choice wasn't the quality the Lancaster family typically uses. I nodded and agreed, and felt absolutely nothing. She had no idea she was having lunch with someone who would own her husband's office building in 4 weeks. But there were moments when the mask slipped. Late at night, I'd stand in the nursery I'd decorated, pale yellow walls, white furniture, that expensive crib Bradley complained about but eventually bought, and feel rage so pure it made my hands shake. This room should have been filled with joy. Instead, it was tainted by lies and theft and betrayal. I'd touch my belly and whisper to my daughter, "I'm going to make sure you grow up knowing your mother was strong, that when people tried to destroy her, she destroyed them back." The worst moment came during a family dinner at the Lancaster estate in Newton. Massive house, 6 bedrooms, manicured lawn, the kind of old money that whispers instead of shouts. Bradley's whole family was there. Diane and Richard, Vanessa and her husband, Preston, Bradley's younger brother Marcus and his wife. Lauren showed up too, because of course she did. She was working on a case with Bradley and Richard, so naturally she stayed for dinner. I watched her move through that house like she already owned it, touching the back of Bradley's chair as she passed, laughing at Richard's jokes, complimenting Diane's decorating choices. She wore a cream-colored dress that probably cost $4,000, pearl earrings that caught the light every time she turned her head. She looked like she belonged there. And me, in my maternity dress from Target, swollen ankles barely fitting in my flats. I looked like exactly what they thought I was. Temporary. Vanessa cornered me in the bathroom. She was reapplying lipstick, dark red, perfectly applied, and she looked at me in the mirror and said, "You know this won't last, right? Bradley needs someone who can keep up with him professionally, someone who understands his world." She didn't say Lauren's name. She didn't have to. I watched her reflection, saw the cruel satisfaction in her eyes, and I thought, "You have no idea that I'm about to evict your father from his office." I smiled at her. Sweet, passive smile. I said, "You're probably right, Vanessa. I'm sure Bradley will end up exactly where he deserves." She smiled back, thinking she'd won, thinking I was admitting defeat. She had no idea I was already calculating how many months of legal fees the Lancaster family could afford before they'd be drowning in debt. That night, lying next to Bradley in our bed, feeling him scroll through his phone under the covers, probably texting Lauren, probably planning their future, I felt something inside me go completely cold. Not frozen, but crystallized, like water turning to ice, becoming something harder and more dangerous. I'd spent months crying, months doubting myself, months wondering if I was crazy or paranoid. Now I knew the truth. Now I had proof. And in less than a month, I'd have power. Patricia called on day 13. She said, "We need to meet. Now." Her voice had an edge I hadn't heard before. Something urgent and almost excited. I told Bradley I had a doctor's appointment, drove to Patricia's office in downtown Boston, and learned just how deep the betrayal went. Lauren wasn't just stealing from our marriage. She was stealing from Richard's law firm. $318,000 over 16 months, moved through Harborview Consulting and 2 other shell companies. Bradley's signature on every document, his name on every transfer authorization. He was either complicit or catastrophically stupid. Either way, he was criminally liable. Patricia spread the documents across her conference table like a prosecutor laying out evidence for a jury. Bank statements, wire transfer receipts, corporate filings from 3 different states, email threads between Lauren and Bradley discussing fund reallocation and asset protection strategies. My hands trembled as I picked up each page, not from fear, but from adrenaline so pure it felt like electricity in my veins. "Here's what we know," Patricia said, pointing to a flowchart she'd created. "Lauren Mitchell has been systematically moving money from Lancaster and Associates through Harborview Consulting. She convinced Bradley and his father to sign off on transfers by disguising them as legitimate business expenses, case research funds, expert witness retainers, consulting fees, all fake. The money went into accounts she controlled, then got moved again to offshore holdings in the Cayman Islands. I stared at the amounts. 47,000, 62,000, 83,500. Numbers that would destroy the Lancaster family firm if they became public. Numbers that represented decades of work, client trust, professional reputation. "Does Richard know?" I asked. Patricia shook her head. Richard signed documents, but he didn't understand what he was signing. Lauren positioned herself as indispensable. She handled all the financial paperwork, managed the accounts, processed transactions. Richard trusted her because she was sleeping with his son, and he thought that made her family. She paused. Bradley, though. Bradley knew. These emails make it clear he understood exactly what was happening. She handed me a printed email dated 4 months earlier. Bradley to Lauren. "Are you sure this won't be traced back to us? My father would kill me if he found." "Out." Lauren's response. "Trust me. By the time anyone notices, we'll be long gone. Claire will be left with nothing. Your parents will blame her for the marriage failing, and we'll be starting fresh in San Francisco with enough money to never worry again." San Francisco. They were planning to leave Boston. planning to abandon everything and everyone, using stolen money to fund their fresh start. I read that email 3 times, feeling each word carve itself deeper into my memory. The casual cruelty of it, the complete dismissal of me as a human being, the assumption that I'd just accept my fate and disappear quietly. "There's more," Patricia said. She pulled out another folder. "The 3 witnesses who claimed your fall was an accident? All employees at Lancaster and Associates, all receiving cash bonuses from Lauren, $5,000 each, paid 2 days after your hospitalization. We have the Venmo records. Lauren wasn't even smart enough to use untraceable payment methods." I felt something like laughter bubbling up in my chest, but it came out as a sound I didn't recognize. Those witnesses sold their integrity for $5,000. They were willing to let a pregnant woman take the blame for her own assault for the price of a used car. Patricia continued, "We also found communication between Lauren and Diane Lancaster. Your mother-in-law knew about the affair from the beginning. She encouraged it. There are text messages where Diane calls you unsuitable and refers to Lauren as the upgrade Bradley deserves. She helped arrange meetings, covered for them, even gave Lauren that engagement ring you saw her wearing. The ring, 3 carats, vintage setting, from Diane's personal collection. I remembered seeing it on Lauren's finger at that family dinner, remembered the way she displayed it so casually, turning her hand to catch the light. It wasn't just an affair anymore. It was a conspiracy. The entire Lancaster family working together to erase me and replace me with someone they deemed more appropriate. "What about Bradley's brother and sister?" I asked. "Marcus and Vanessa?" "They didn't know about the financial fraud, but they knew about the affair. We have group text messages from a Lancaster family chat, you're not included, obviously, where they discuss how to handle the Claire situation. Vanessa suggested waiting until after the baby was born to serve divorce papers. Marcus thought Bradley should move Lauren into the house immediately. After you left. Diane said you'd probably go back to wherever you came from and wouldn't fight for custody." I stood up and walked to the window. Patricia's office overlooked Boston Common, all that green space in the middle of the city, people walking dogs, tourists taking photos, normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that in this office, someone's entire world was being reduced to evidence folders and criminal charges. "Can we prove all of this in court?" I asked, still looking out the window. "Absolutely. Federal prosecutors will be very interested in the wire fraud and money laundering. The Massachusetts Bar Association will want to know about lawyers stealing from their own firm. And family court judges really don't like men who steal from pregnant wives." Patricia's voice had satisfaction in it, the tone of someone who's built an airtight case. I turned back to face her. "I want immunity for Bradley if he cooperates fully, complete testimony against Lauren, and documentation of his parents' involvement. In exchange, I want full custody, complete financial disclosure, and his agreement to every term of divorce I dictate." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "You're willing to let him avoid prison?" "I don't want him in prison. I want him broken. I want him to live with what he did, to watch everything he thought he was building with Lauren collapse, to know that his daughter will grow up knowing exactly what kind of man he is. Prison would be too easy. I want him to face consequences every single day for the rest of his life." I sounded cold, even to my own ears, but I didn't care. The Claire who cried herself to sleep was gone. In her place was someone who understood that mercy was weakness, and weakness got you pushed downstairs. Marcus Wright called me 4 days later. The inheritance was ready. $1 billion in combined assets, $600 million liquid, $400 million in commercial real estate across 23 states. The probate court had signed off. The transfer was complete. I was now one of the wealthiest women in New England, and nobody in Bradley's world had any idea. "When do you want to go public?" Marcus asked. "I need 2 more weeks," I said. I was standing in my kitchen, watching Bradley through the window as he loaded his golf clubs into his car. Saturday morning, heading to the club, probably meeting Lauren there, probably planning their future while I planned their destruction. I want everything perfectly aligned. The federal investigation ready to move, the divorce papers prepared, the real estate transfers documented. When I hit them, I want it to be total. "Understood. I'll prepare the press release for Morrison Holdings. Once it goes out, every business publication in the country will know who you are." After I hung up, I sat at the kitchen table and let myself feel the weight of what was coming. In 14 days, I would transform from invisible wife to visible heiress, from powerless victim to powerful adversary. The thought should have made me happy, but instead I felt hollow. This wasn't how I'd imagined my life going. At 32 years old, 7 months pregnant, I should have been preparing a nursery with a husband who loved me, planning for our growing family, feeling secure and cherished. Instead, I was orchestrating the systematic destruction of everyone who'd tried to destroy me first. My daughter kicked hard against my ribs. She'd been doing that more lately. These powerful jabs that felt almost aggressive. I put my hand on my belly and whispered, "I know, baby girl. I know you want out. Just hold on a little longer. Mommy needs to finish something first." That night, Bradley came home late again. 10:47 p.m., I noted the exact time. He smelled like perfume and wine. His shirt wrinkled in a way that suggested it had been removed and put back on. He didn't even try to hide it anymore. The disrespect was so complete, it had become casual. "Where were you?" I asked. My voice was neutral, curious, not accusatory. I'd learned that anger made him defensive, but calm questions made him lie more freely. Late meeting with a client. You know how it is. He didn't look at me when he said it, just walked past me toward the bedroom, already pulling out his phone to check messages. "Which client?" He paused, turned, looked at me with irritation. "Why does it matter, Claire? You wouldn't know them anyway." There it was, that dismissive tone that implied I was too stupid to understand his important work. I felt my jaw tighten but kept my face relaxed. "Just curious. I like to know about your day." The merchant's case. Complex corporate litigation. Very technical. Nothing you'd find interesting. Each sentence was a little wall, keeping me out, reminding me I didn't belong in his professional world. The merchant's case didn't exist. I'd already checked with Patricia, who'd verified there was no such client in the Lancaster and Associates database. Bradley was getting sloppy with his lies, probably because he thought I was too passive to question him, too pregnant and tired to investigate. "Okay," I said, smiled. "I made dinner. It's in the fridge if you're hungry." He grunted something that might have been thanks and disappeared into our bedroom. I heard the shower turn on, washing away Lauren's perfume, I assumed, erasing evidence like he'd done 100 times before. I went to the nursery and stood in the doorway. The crib was assembled. The changing table was stocked. I'd hung curtains with little moons and stars, painted the walls that soft yellow color, arranged stuffed animals on the shelves. This room should have been my sanctuary. Instead, every time I looked at it, I felt rage. My phone buzzed. Text from Patricia. "Federal prosecutor wants to move faster. They're concerned about flight risk. Can we accelerate timeline?" I typed back. 1 week? I need 1 more week to get the real estate transfers completed. Tell them Lauren isn't going anywhere. I'm having her watched. Because I was. Patricia had assigned a surveillance team to follow Lauren 24 hours a day. I knew she was planning something. Her behavior had become erratic over the past 2 weeks. She'd stopped coming to Lancaster family events. She'd missed 3 days of work. Her social media had gone quiet. Someone preparing to run. Another text from Patricia. Surveillance caught her at the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston. Yesterday. She withdrew $93,000 in cash from a safety deposit box. She's definitely preparing to leave. My hands went cold. $93,000 in cash meant she was planning to disappear soon. Maybe within days. If she ran before I was ready, everything could fall apart. The federal case needed her in Massachusetts. My revenge needed her present and accountable. I called Patricia. "How fast can we move? If the inheritance goes public tomorrow, and we file criminal charges, simultaneously, we can freeze her assets and request a federal hold. She won't be able to leave the state." "Do it," I said. My voice didn't shake. "Tomorrow morning. I'm done waiting." That night, I didn't sleep. I lay next to Bradley, listening to him breathe, feeling my daughter move inside me, and I counted down the hours. At 6 a.m., Marcus would release the press statement. At 8 a.m., Patricia would deliver the evidence to federal prosecutors. At 9 a.m., the FBI would arrest Lauren, Mitchell. At 10 a.m., Bradley would receive divorce papers and a cooperation agreement. By noon tomorrow, the entire Lancaster family would know exactly who Claire Morrison was, and they would understand that pushing me down those stairs was the worst mistake of their lives. I woke up at 5 a.m. without needing an alarm. My body knew this was the day. I could feel it in every nerve, every muscle, every breath. The morning light was just starting to filter through the curtains, that pale gray color that comes right before sunrise. Bradley was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his face, completely unaware that in a few hours his entire world would implode. I got out of bed carefully, quietly. My belly was so heavy now that every movement required strategy. I walked to the bathroom, closed the door, and looked at myself in the mirror. Dark circles under my eyes, hair that needed washing, a face that looked older than 32. But my eyes were different. They looked harder, colder. I barely recognized the woman staring back at me, and that was fine. The old Claire was gone. This new version was better. At 6:03 a.m., my phone buzzed. Marcus, press release is live. Morrison Holdings officially announces new CEO. Your name is everywhere. I opened my laptop and searched my name. The results loaded slowly. Each one another nail in Bradley's coffin. Bloomberg, Claire Morrison. Named CEO of billion-dollar real estate empire. Forbes. Mysterious heiress emerges. Samuel Morrison's granddaughter takes control. Boston Business Journal. Local woman inherits Morrison Holdings, one of largest private real estate portfolios in United States. There was a photo of me from my grandfather's funeral, looking composed in a black dress, my face serious. The caption identified me as Claire Morrison Lancaster, wife of Bradley Lancaster, attorney at Lancaster and Associates. That last part wouldn't be true much longer. At 7:15, I heard Bradley's alarm go off, heard him shuffle to the bathroom, turn on the shower. He was singing. Actually singing in the shower, like he didn't have a care in the world. The sound made my stomach turn. How could someone be so oblivious to their own impending destruction? I went downstairs, made coffee, and waited. The morning news was on the kitchen TV, volume low. At 7:32, the business segment started. The anchor's voice was professional, excited. Breaking news in the Boston business community. Claire, Morrison Lancaster has been named CEO of Morrison Holdings, the real estate investment firm founded by her late grandfather Samuel Morrison. The company controls an estimated $1 billion in commercial properties nationwide, including several landmark buildings right here in Boston. They showed footage of the Morrison Building downtown, that beautiful Art Deco structure on Federal Street. Then they showed 2 more buildings I owned. One of them was 225 Franklin Street, the building that housed Lancaster and Associates, the building where Bradley's father had operated his law firm for 33 years. Bradley walked into the kitchen at 7:41. He was wearing his navy suit, the one he thought made him look powerful. He poured coffee, grabbed his phone, and was about to leave when he glanced at the TV. He froze, literally stopped moving mid-step, coffee cup halfway to his mouth. I watched his face change as he processed what he was seeing. Confusion first, then recognition, then something that looked like panic. Claire? His voice was strange, uncertain. Are they talking about you? I looked up from my own phone like I'd just noticed. Oh, that. Yes. I meant to tell you. My grandfather left me his company. The will finally cleared probate. The coffee cup slipped from his hand. It shattered on the tile floor, brown liquid spreading across the white surface like a stain. He didn't even look at it. His eyes were locked on the TV screen, which was now showing the estimated value of Morrison Holdings. $1 billion. The number was right there in white letters against a blue background. $1 billion. He sounded like he was choking. Your grandfather was worth $1 billion. Approximately. Give or take a few million. I kept my voice casual, like we were discussing the weather. The lawyers asked me to keep it quiet during probate. You know how these things are. Publicity complicates estate transfers. He was still, staring at the TV. His face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. I could see his mind working, calculating, realizing. All those months he'd been planning to leave me penniless. All those transfers to Harborview Consulting. All that money he'd been stealing. And the whole time, I'd been sitting on a fortune 1,000 times larger than anything he'd ever imagined. Why didn't you tell me? His voice was accusatory now, angry, like I'd betrayed him by keeping secrets. The irony was so perfect. It almost made me laugh. I'm telling you now. I stood up slowly, my hand on my belly. Actually, there's quite a bit I need to tell you today, starting with the fact that I know about Harborview Consulting. I know about the $318,000 you and Lauren stole from your father's firm. I know about the offshore accounts. I know about San Francisco. The color drained from his face completely. He looked like he might pass out. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. I know about all of it, Bradley. Every transfer, every lie, every moment you thought I was too stupid or too exhausted to notice what you were doing. My voice was steady, calm, almost gentle. That scared him more than yelling would have. I could see it in his eyes. "Claire, I can explain." "No," I interrupted. "You can't. There's no explanation that makes this better. But here's what you can do. You can cooperate with federal investigators when they contact you in about..." I checked my watch. 43 minutes. "You can testify against Lauren. You can agree to every term of the divorce I'm about to file. Or you can go to prison. Those are your options." Bradley's phone started ringing at 8:07 a.m., then again at 8:09, then continuously, a cascade of calls and texts and notifications that made the device vibrate across the counter like it was having a seizure. He picked it up with shaking hands. I watched his face as he read message after message. Watched the reality sink in deeper with each passing second. "My father," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "My father wants to know why the FBI is at the office." "Claire, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I said calmly. "Lauren stole from your family firm. You helped her. I simply made sure the appropriate authorities knew about it. That's called civic duty, Bradley." His phone rang again. Richard's name on the screen. Bradley answered, put it on speaker with trembling hands. His father's voice came through loud and furious. "Where the hell are you? There are federal agents in my conference room demanding access to all financial records. They're saying something about wire fraud and money laundering. They mentioned your name and Lauren's name. What the fuck is going on?" Bradley looked at me. Actually looked at me. Maybe for the first time in years. Really saw me. And I saw the moment he understood that I wasn't the passive, defeated woman he'd been living with. I was something else entirely. Something dangerous. "Dad, I can't talk right now. I need to. They're asking about accounts I've never heard of. Harborview Consulting. Eastern Capital Trust. They have documents with your signature, Bradley. They're saying we've been defrauded. They're saying you're complicit." Richard's voice cracked. Actual emotion breaking through that usually controlled exterior. "Tell me this isn't real. Tell me you didn't steal from your own family." Bradley ended the call. He was breathing hard, almost hyperventilating. "You reported us to the FBI. I reported crimes to the FBI." I corrected. "There's a difference. If you hadn't committed those crimes, there would be nothing to report. This will destroy my career, my father's firm, everything we've built." "Yes," I agreed. "It will, just like you were planning to destroy me. Funny how that works." Another call, this time from a number Bradley didn't recognize. He answered it cautiously. A woman's voice, professional and cold. "Mr. Lancaster, this is Special Agent Rebecca Torres with the FBI. We need you to come to our field office immediately for questioning regarding wire fraud and conspiracy charges. You have the right to have an attorney present." Bradley hung up. His hands were shaking so badly he dropped the phone. It clattered on the counter. He looked at me with something approaching desperation. "Claire, please. Think about our daughter. Think about what this will do to her, growing up knowing her. Father is in prison. I have thought about our daughter," I said. My voice was ice now, all pretense of warmth gone. "I've thought about how she almost died when Lauren pushed me down the stairs. I've thought about how you arrived at the hospital 3 hours late, smelling like your mistress, and stayed for 15 minutes. I've thought about how you've been stealing money that should have secured her future. I've thought about all of it, Bradley. Every single moment." I pulled out the manila envelope I'd prepared. It was thick, heavy with documents. I placed it on the counter between us. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to cooperate fully with the federal investigation. You're going to testify that Lauren orchestrated the fraud and you were manipulated into participating. You're going to provide evidence of your mother's involvement. You're going to agree to every single term in these divorce papers, including full custody of our daughter to me, child support of $12,000 per month, and zero claim to any Morrison assets. $12,000 a month." He looked physically ill. "Claire, I can't afford that. Once this investigation goes public, I'll lose my law license. I'll be unemployable. Then I suggest you find new career options. Accounting, maybe. Data entry. Something that doesn't require trust or ethics." I pushed the envelope closer to him. "Sign these papers, Bradley. Right now, before the FBI gets here. And if I don't, then I tell federal prosecutors that you were the mastermind, that you manipulated Lauren, not the other way around. I have enough documentation to support that narrative. My lawyers are very good, and coincidentally, the federal prosecutor assigned to this case used to work for Morrison Holdings. She owes my grandfather's memory quite a bit." His face went gray. "You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a choice. The same choice you were planning to give me. Sign papers and accept the terms. Or lose everything. The difference is my terms are actually legal. He opened the envelope with shaking hands, read through the divorce agreement. I watched his eyes move across each page, seeing his future dissolve in legal language. Full custody to Claire Morrison. Father granted supervised visitation every other Sunday. Child support $12,000 monthly. Division of assets. 0% to Bradley Lancaster. 100% to Claire Morrison, as all marital property was either fraudulently obtained or exists in trust prior to marriage. This leaves me with nothing, he whispered. Yes, I said, just like you planned to leave me with nothing. Except I'm letting you keep your freedom if you cooperate. That's more generous than you deserve. A knock on the door. Hard, official, the kind of knock that announces authority. Through the window I could see 2 people in dark suits holding badges. FBI. Bradley looked at me one last time. There was something almost pleading in his expression, like he was hoping I'd suddenly forgive everything, call it all off, go back to being the woman who folded his laundry and made his dinners. I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. Sign the papers, Bradley, before they take you away. 6 months later, I'm standing in the nursery of my new home in Beacon Hill, holding my daughter Sophia Morrison while she sleeps against my chest. Not Sophia Lancaster. Never Sophia Lancaster. Just Morrison. Clean. Simple. Untainted by the family that tried to destroy us both. The November sunlight filters through windows that overlook Boston Common, painting everything in gold. This house is mine, bought with my own money, filled with furniture I chose, decorated in colors that make me happy instead of colors that impressed Bradley's mother. Sophia is perfect. 8 pounds, 6 ounces when she was born. Dark hair like mine. Eyes that are still that undefined baby blue, but show hints of turning brown. She has my grandfather's chin, that determined set that suggests stubbornness and strength. When I look at her, I feel something I never felt during my marriage. Pure, uncomplicated love. No resentment, no betrayal. Just this tiny human who depends on me completely and deserves everything I can give her. Lauren is in federal prison in Danbury, Connecticut, sentenced to 11 years for wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. She'll be eligible for parole in 7 years if she behaves perfectly, which I doubt she will. Prison doesn't suit people like Lauren. People who need designer clothes and expensive restaurants and the admiration of men they're stealing from. I received a letter from her 3 months ago. She wanted to apologize, she said. Wanted me to know she never meant to hurt me, that things just got out of control, that she was sorry about the push. I burned the letter without finishing it. Her apologies mean nothing. Her regret changes nothing. She's exactly where she belongs. Bradley lives in a studio, apartment in Dorchester now. Works as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm that doesn't ask too many questions about disbarred lawyers. He makes $43,000 a year, barely enough to cover his child support obligations and basic living expenses. He sees Sophia every other Sunday for 4 hours, supervised visits at a family center where a social worker watches every interaction. He brings her stuffed animals he can't afford, and talks to her in that awkward way people talk to. Babies they don't really know. She cries when he holds her. Some part of her understands that he's a stranger, not a father. He never went to prison. The immunity deal I arranged saved him from that, but it didn't save him from consequences. His testimony destroyed Lauren's defense and implicated his own mother. That cooperation earned him leniency with federal prosecutors, but earned him something else from his family. Complete exile. Richard won't speak to him. Diane sends him emails sometimes. Long rambling messages about betrayal and disappointment, which Bradley forwards to me like he thinks I'll feel sympathy. I don't. I delete them without reading past the first line. Diane and Richard lost everything. Lancaster and Associates closed 4 months ago after clients fled and creditors demanded payment. They sold their Newton estate, their vacation home in the Berkshires, Diane's jewelry collection. They're living in a 2-bedroom condo in Boca Raton now, retired in the way people retire when they have no other options. Diane sent me a handwritten letter last month. Apology, explanation, justification. She wrote that she only wanted what was best for Bradley, that she never intended for things to go so far, that she hoped I could understand a mother's love. I didn't burn that letter. I framed it, hung it in my home office as a reminder that even mothers can be monsters when they value status over human decency. Vanessa tried to reach out through social media, sending Messages about family and forgiveness and moving forward. I blocked her on every platform. Some bridges don't deserve rebuilding. Some relationships are toxic at their foundation. The Lancaster family spent years making me feel small, invisible, inadequate. Now they know what irrelevance feels like, and I feel absolutely nothing about their suffering. The 3 witnesses who lied about my fall each paid $30,000 in damages after I sued them individually. Small amounts compared to what I could have taken, but enough to hurt. Enough to ensure they'll remember the cost of lying for Lauren Mitchell. One of them wrote me an apology, explained she was scared of losing her job, hoped I could understand the pressure she was under. I understood perfectly. Understanding doesn't mean forgiving. Morrison Holdings is thriving. I've expanded into sustainable housing development across 12 states, creating affordable units in cities where working families are being priced out of existence. Every building I develop includes childcare facilities, community spaces, and programs for single mothers. Women who've left abusive relationships get priority placement, subsidized rent, legal support. I'm building the safety net I needed when I thought I had nothing. I'm becoming the person who saves women like I used to be. My days are full now. Board meetings, development projects, Sophia's schedule of feedings and naps and tummy time. I have a nanny, Maria, who treats Sophia like her own granddaughter. I have a housekeeper, a chef who meal preps twice a week, a driver for when I'm too tired to navigate Boston traffic. I have help, resources, support, everything I didn't have when I was folding Bradley's laundry and crying alone in the dark. Sometimes people ask if I'm angry, if I'm bitter, if I struggle with trust after everything that happened. The answer is complicated. I'm not angry anymore. Anger requires emotional investment, and I have none left for the people who tried to destroy me. I'm not bitter. Bitterness suggests regret, and I regret nothing about how I handled my revenge. Trust is harder. I don't trust easily now, but I don't see that as weakness. I see it as wisdom. Sophia is waking up, making those small sounds babies make before they fully commit to crying. I adjust her in my arms, feel her tiny hand grip my finger with surprising strength. She looks at me with those unfocused eyes, and I see her whole future stretching ahead. She'll grow up, knowing her mother was strong, that when people tried to push her down, she got back up and pushed harder. She'll never watch me accept mistreatment or tolerate disrespect. She'll learn that power isn't just about money, it's about knowing your worth and refusing to settle for less. I think about Lauren sometimes, in that prison cell. I wonder if she replays that moment on the stairs, if she realizes that pushing me was the beginning of her own fall. I hope she does. I hope she has years to think about how one moment of cruelty cost her everything. This is Claire Morrison's story, a story about a woman who was pushed down and chose to rise up stronger. If you've ever felt invisible, powerless, trapped in circumstances someone else created, remember this. Your power might be sleeping, but it's not dead. And when you finally wake it up, when you finally decide you're done accepting less than you deserve, the people who underestimated you will never see it coming. Subscribe for more stories about women who refuse to stay down. Comment below and tell me, what would you have done in Claire's position? And click the next video to hear about Miranda Chen, the tech executive who discovered her business partner was sabotaging her and built $1 billion company just to destroy his. Some people think revenge is petty. I think revenge is poetry, and Claire Morrison just wrote a masterpiece.